Hello everyone, and welcome to your Daily 5 for Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. I'm Leslie Jouflas of Trading Live Online, and I do these segments a couple of times a month. Today, I'm going to be updating, which I often do, the indexes. We're going to look at the S&P 500. There is a little more work for the markets to do on the upside, I think, to really prove themselves. And so we're going to look at a few things on the charts. We'll look at the S&P 500. We'll look at a SPY chart. We'll look at Nasdaq, Dow Jones Industrial. And I'm also going to update you from a segment that I did on your Daily 5 back in August, on August 19th. And I did that on the Russell 2000 and the seasonal upside window, which we are in right now for it. So we'll take a look at the IWM for the Russell 2000. Okay, let's get to some charts. All right, so we're looking at the SPY on a monthly chart. We'll start out with the monthly chart. We'll kind of work our way down some time frames on the S&P 500. But you'll notice here that the SPY had 3 months to the downside, and the support was found right around this level here. You can see all of the opens and closes. I pointed this out before on several of your Daily 5 videos, so some of you might already be familiar with this. And if you're new to it, I think this is a really important area to be watching for price if it comes back down around these lows. There were so many opens and closes for, you can see how many months that the market traded sideways. It was close to, well, actually it was a little over a full year before it finally broke above. We see where the low came in, retesting this area of support. And also another thing to notice here is this low to high retracement. Although it sort of skidded past it, notice that the close of this bar is sitting right on that 382. So the open of the next bar, the month that we're in right now, November, is pretty close to where the close of this bar was. So this is going to be an important support area for the market. It's not really surprising to me that the market has had a bounce up from 3 solid months to the downside. Here we can see the market move down one very large bar candle to the downside. There was movement to the downside, but closed right where the lows were. And then another downside, and look at the sharp rally to the upside, little more rally, and then down to new lows. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I think that there's a little bit more work for the market to do. So we're going to take a look at some of the levels that I'm looking for. One thing that I'm really watching very closely on the monthly chart and other time frames as well is the RSI. I've got a couple of levels drawn in here. Where this dashed line is right here, this down arrow is pointing at that. The market to turn really bullish is going to need to see that RSI get above that dashed line. I think that's going to be really important. If we see a test up to it and then a turn back down, the market's still not ready to turn really bullish. So let's take a look at some other charts. I think there's a couple of things to take note of with the daily chart of the S&P 500. So we were looking at the SPY, that's the ETF for the S&P. Now we're looking at the futures chart of the S&P. We can see going back to 2022 high down to the October 2022 low in the market. Have the uptrend from there. And you can see where the market, where I showed you on the SPY, all of those months of it going sideways. So we can really clearly see on the daily chart where some of those peaks were that the market was trying to get above. And here's where the low was, coming right back about to this low. This was the last retest down before the market made this leg to the upside. Now with that, the market this last summer in July started to move back to the downside. And what we have here is we now have the high and we have the low. There's a lower high and a lower low, lower high and a lower low. So the market is still in that pattern of lower highs and lower lows. We have a downtrend over here. This downtrending trend line, starting from July 2023, coming across here and extended back, that's going to be a trend line that the market's going to have to close above with conviction in order for the market to really get back and challenge the highs, the all-time highs from 2022. Now, a couple of scenarios that I see might play out is one, possibly get a little bit of an extension, retest of that trend line there. We'll have to see what happens. But right now, there's a clustering of prices here that the market's testing. So the high there is about just above the 44.30, I think, 44.30 and a half level. But notice right here, I'm going to expand this out so we can take a look at something else I think is interesting. So the markets have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strong days to the upside. And then we have an inside bar here. And then we see that the market, so this was on Tuesday's trading, the market traded a bit above that, but again, look at all the resistance that's right here. So let's take a look at a weekly chart, but before we go to that, let me show you this also, is that the support here on the futures is right around this 41.22. So one scenario is that the price from here possibly turns down and does a retracement, then turns back to the upside. Well, that could form an inverse head and shoulder pattern. I like to kind of look ahead and see what the potential chart patterns are that might form. You know, we don't know if that's going to happen, but we can certainly, with the retracement, be watching for that type of a pattern. And as I said, it might also come across this high, do an extension type of a pattern where this leg just extends above there. It might be a Fibonacci ratio of about maybe 1.27 from high to low and up. But that would be a test of this trend line. I think that's going to be important to watch. This trend line really has not had a lot of tests to it. We've had a test up here, kind of minor test here and here, but it's not like other trend lines we see from here where there's really multiple tests of it. So I think that we'll probably get a test of it if we get above these highs and then turn to the downside. Now let's take a look at the S&P futures on a weekly chart. Now these are just some chart patterns that have occurred along the way. I still have them on my chart to kind of remind me what's the bullish and the bearish patterns. So the most recent one was this, we had this ABCD, this is a sell pattern. And so the market, that's where it turned to the downside and started to make the low, the lower high, the lower low, lower high, lower low. However, with that, this is what's called an ABCD buy pattern. And so to me, the market, this is what also is saying to me the market really has to prove itself one direction or the other. So we've already got the trend lines that we just looked at for the bullish case. So for the bearish case, this is what I would be looking at. This is the weekly chart. So this one very long candle in candlestick theory, generally about the 50% level, which is going to be right about, I'm just going to eyeball this, you guys. Oh, that's not it. You guys can measure it out. Just going to kind of eyeball it. Right around a very strong candle, about the 50% level, is generally going to be a good support or resistance if it's a down candle. So we get maybe a little bit more bump to the upside, retesting these, and then it comes back down. Price comes back down again. I would be looking for support in this area. If price comes down much deeper than that, then there might be some more underlying forces to the downside. Uh, when it gets just that 50% retracement and bounces off and makes another high above this candle, that's generally a bullish signal, and then it's probably going to be right up against those trend lines. So here's a retracement level that's just below the 4,300 level again, about 42 and 3/4, somewhere in that range. Right now, the lows of this pattern, the 41.22, those are important lows. That was a price level that the market held, all of this chopping back and forth, and held that as support. To take out a bullish candle this size and break through those lows would be very bearish, in my opinion. And again, the RSI on the weekly chart has still not gotten into a very, very bullish position. So I'm going to really be watching the RSI. You can see on the weekly that the RSI hit a low down here and has been, moving up with the price, but currently it's just not breaking any bullish records yet. Not to say that it won't, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on right now. So we'll take a look at the Dow Jones Industrials. And the Dow Jones is just getting a little bit above this peak, but is coming into this level of testing some resistance here. And also up, I can extend this line over a bit more, also right around these highs here. If we look at a retracement back to the upside, notice how it retraced almost to the 50% level, did not quite make it there. Showed some strength by not getting all the way down to it. But let's see on this direction where the retracement's coming in. So this 0.618 high to low, 0.618 retracement, this may offer some resistance. There's a little gap area in there as well. So again, I want to really be watching to see how price reacts on any test back down. So the Dow has some gaps in it, so we want to watch those and see if they hold as support. If they don't, then that's telling us a little bit more information. So we'll be following the price action on those tests to the downside. So this is a chart of the Nasdaq on a daily chart of the futures of the Nasdaq. And again, I just have a history of different trend lines and retracements and patterns on here. So right now, let's kind of focus on this section. Because again, we've got the high, the low, the lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, and not quite a higher high. But look at where this resistance zone is coming in. Now this was a sell pattern. This is called a butterfly sell pattern. I had this on Daily 5 and my own channel as well. And it had gotten right up to around that 886 level, and that's where the market started to decline. So again, expecting some resistance and testing around these price levels. So we might see maybe a little bit more up of a test, and then again a retracement down. So we really want to watch that retracement. Now the NASDAQ also, if it gets just a retracement down and then back to the upside, then we might have an inverse head and shoulder with this being around the neckline. So let's keep an eye out and see if that happens. That would be a very bullish signal, in my opinion, if that pattern were to occur. It would be breaking through all of this resistance here. And just as with the S&P, breaking below these lows would be very bearish. So this is why I think the market still needs to prove itself. It still has a little ways to go. We can draw a trend line also on this chart from this high. Whoops, that's just missing it. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can spread this out a little bit more, get a little bit better trend line going. Now there's two trend lines here. This one here And then we can also go from this high and fan this out across here. So you can see that the price is right up against that trend line. So let's be watching the next few days and see what happens with the Nasdaq. Above this trend line and right here where that blue line is where you want to be watching. That was a big resistance zone for the Nasdaq. All right, the last chart I want to talk about today, as I mentioned back in August, I talked about the seasonal window, which is November through just about January, and the Russell 2000 and small cap stocks. Um, the Russell has spent a lot of time the last couple of years forming very large ranges, as you can see. So the 2000 21, 22 high had a false breakout to the upside, and then the downside was the larger direction. But since the lows in June of 2022 for the Russell, it's been forming another very, very large range. And so it's back, let's see, just about here, uh, just a little further back, somewhere right around this area is where I said that, to be starting to plan and watching for some of the stronger stocks in the Russell 2000, some, looking for things for buying candidates. So the Russell made its way all the way down to the lower end of this range. And with the other indexes, it's had a move to the upside, and it's already started to retrace to the downside. So this one is, since we have so many tests of this support level for a longer period of time, if these lows break, then we can likely do a measured move, high to low, and measure that down. And same thing for the upside. If this breaks to the upside, we can do a measured move, height of the pattern, project it from the breakout back to the upside. The center line, you can see a lot of trading up and down around that center line. So this might be the first level of the resistance for the actual ETF. But again, if the other indexes are continuing to rise and make it through those resistance areas that we've mapped out, again, I would be looking for some of the small cap stocks. You can go into stock charts and you can go find some of the Russell 2000 stocks and start looking at those because the seasonal window is going to go all the way into the end of December and into January. All right, that's it for me. Again, I'm Leslie Jouflas of Trading Live Online, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch the video today on your Daily 5. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them for me. I do check back for hopefully the first week and see if there's anything that I can help out with. Anyway, have a great November, everybody. I'll see you on the next Your Daily 5.